If you're a woman and you've been scared away from fasting by this influencer or that guru, I think this video is really going to help you a lot. Fasting is a very powerful tool for fat burning, for weight loss, for health optimization. And I'd hate for you to miss out on this wonderfully powerful tool because of some bad advice you got online. There's only been very, very small amounts of research done on fasting in women. Most of this research wasn't done specifically just for females. Most of this research was done in rats, or it had a very, very small sample size, meaning there were only a few people as participants in the study. Or the study researchers considered fasting to be the exact same thing as calorie restriction, which it absolutely is not. So if you hear someone on social media talking about how fasting is dangerous for women for this reason or the other, then I think this might be the video you've been looking for. I'm Dr. Ken Berry, a family physician with 20 years of clinical experience. And this video is going to help you understand women and fasting. Is it healthy or is it harmful? Now, I'm going to apply my 3 litmus tests that I apply to everything that involves human nutrition and human health, and that is the science or meaningful research, the paleoanthropology, and then just the common sense. So I've already talked about the science a little bit. There's virtually no meaningful research about fasting in women, whether it's dangerous or healthy. All of the studies have various flaws, some of them quite severe. I don't really care what a research study in female rats showed. Also, I don't care if the researchers thought that fasting was exactly the same thing as calorie restriction. Those are 2 different paradigms. They don't have anything to do with each other. And then also, I don't really care if there was only a study with 8 women in it. That's not going to be scientifically powerful enough to tell us whether this is causing that or is correlated to that or has any meaning whatsoever. So there's just no science, so we can't go on that. So next we're going to go to the paleoanthropology of this, and that tells us men and women, male humans and female humans are the same species, and a man and a woman shares about 98.5% of the same DNA. So there are differences, no doubt, but the genetic differences between a male and a female are very small, okay? Males and females have always lived together. We've always eaten the same food, or if there was no food to eat, we've always fasted together. The only time in paleoanthropological evidence or in current hunter-gatherer tribes and societies that we have access to, the only time a woman gets special treatment as far as diet is if she's pregnant or if she's breastfeeding. And I think those 2 do apply to fasting, and I'll talk about that later in this video. But as far as is fasting in any way being dangerous for your thyroid, or dangerous that it's going to mess up your period, or that you're not going to get enough nutrients if you do that, or that it increases your cortisol level, or that you lose your hunger cues. These are all things that I've seen in magazine articles and other influencers talk about. There's zero research to back any of that up. And there's also zero paleoanthropological research. Looking back at us 50,000, 100,000 years ago, there's nothing to back that up. And then let's look at the common sense of this. All of the major religions have, or at least used to have, fasting as a big part of their religious practice. The Buddhists, the Hindus, the Muslims, the Catholics, all these guys, millions and millions of people fasted. And not a single one of these religions made any special exemption on fasting if you were a woman. The only 2 exemptions as a woman is if you were pregnant or if you were breastfeeding. And I think those make common sense. We should make a special allowance for that. But as just a normal woman who's not pregnant, not breastfeeding, fasting is good for you. It's not bad for you. The main warning signs that I've seen out there for women who are thinking about trying fasting, and you've probably seen these too, is that it might increase your cortisol level. This is something that was found in female rats. And if you're not a rat, I don't think we can really apply that study to you. There's a lot of gurus out there who'll say, oh, it'll stop your periods or it'll make your periods irregular. The tiny bit of research that we do have shows that it'll actually make your period lighter or less heavy. Most women wouldn't have a problem with that. A lot of people say it can cause hypothyroidism. And what this is coming from is a misunderstanding of the basic physiology of the thyroid gland. Your thyroid gland makes thyroid hormones. And like any other hormone, you can be resistant to your thyroid hormones. And indeed, many overweight women do have thyroid hormone resistance. It's a lot like insulin resistance. You may have heard of that. And as you lose weight and get healthier, your insulin resistance gets better. And so what happens to your insulin level in your blood? It goes down. And that's good, right? The same exact thing happens with thyroid hormone resistance. If you're overweight, then you're going to be thyroid hormone resistant. In order to compensate for that, your thyroid's going to have to produce more thyroid hormone to get the message across. As you get healthier and lose the fat, you're going to become less thyroid hormone resistant, and therefore your thyroid's going to make less thyroid hormones. A lot of people who don't understand the upside down and backwards method of how the thyroid works think that the lowered thyroid hormones means, oh, you're developing hypothyroidism. It's not true at all. This is actually a very healthy and a very good thing. I've heard people say that if you fast, that you might not take in enough vitamins and minerals, fat and protein. And if you're portion controlling and calorie restricting, then that very well may be the case, but I don't recommend you do either one of those. Fasting in and of itself is not going to make you develop any nutrient deficiencies whatsoever. And then the last one I found in an article is that if you fast, you might lose your hunger cues. And so you might forget how to be hungry, or I don't know exactly what they meant, but that's dumb. So don't worry about that. So if you're a woman and you'd like to try fasting, then I 100% support that. I think you're going to, especially if you're overweight or obese or morbidly obese, you're going to get a ton of benefits from this. So I'm 100% in your corner wanting you to try fasting. Let me give you a few tips that I found that really help women, and men too for that matter, with fasting, but it really seems to help women because they tend to make these mistakes. So number one is, rather than do a longer fast, a 3-day, 5-day, 7-day fast, why not start with an intermittent fast every single day? You already fast 8 hours every single day of your life. When you're asleep, you don't eat. That's fasting. And so why not just extend your 8-hour sleeping fast and turn it into a 12-hour or a 14-hour fast? You only have to add a few hours on each side of your sleeping window, and you've got a pretty darn decent fast. Then as weeks go by, you can slowly increase this fast, okay? And so if you wind up doing a 16 or an 18-hour fast every single day, you're going to get virtually all of the health benefits, including autophagy, from fasting as you would get from a 3, 5, or 7-day fast. It's much easier, and you definitely don't run any risk of all these dangers that you may have heard about out there. And so it's somewhere between a 14 and a 20-hour daily fast is going to be easy for you to do. During your feeding window, you can eat 1 or 2 or 3 meals. Doesn't matter. But here's some things I really want you to think about. When you're in your feeding window and it's time to eat, I want you to understand that with fasting, and definitely if you're combining fasting with a low-carb, a keto, or a carnivore diet, there is zero need for you to portion control or calorie restrict. If everything on your plate is real, whole, proper human food, you don't have to count calories. You don't have to restrict calories. You don't have to eat a palm-sized portion of anything. You get to eat until you're comfortably full. If you're not doing that, then you might develop one of these other problems that people are worried about, because then you're calorie restricting again, aren't you? And so if you say, okay, I'm going to have ribeye, but just a little palm-sized portion, and then half an avocado, and that's, 3 blueberries, and you walk away from that meal still hungry, then you run the risk of all these things actually happening, because you're not fasting. You're calorie restriction. You are energy restricting your body. That could mess with your thyroid. It could mess with your cortisol. It could make it go up because that's a stressful situation. It's fine to fast, but when you break your fast, you want to break your fast with a meal that satisfies you, with 1 or 2 or 3 meals, depending on how you do this. So never portion control, never calorie restrict. My wife, Nisha, actually has Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And this is another condition that gurus out there will say, oh, you should never fast if you have Hashimoto's. She fasts every day. She has about a 16 to an 18-hour fast every single day. She feels great. If you look at her lab work, her Hashimoto's thyroiditis is in complete remission. So hundreds of her friends, both in person and online with Hashimoto's, also fast every day, and they don't have any problem with this at all. Another big worry is that a woman might either develop an eating disorder because of fasting, or it might reawaken an old eating disorder you used to have in the past. And so my recommendation to avoid this, if you've ever had an eating disorder, or if you're just afraid you might randomly develop one, is when you do eat, make sure you eat lots of fat and lots of protein, because those are going to contain all the vitamins and minerals you need to not only satiate you from a nutrition standpoint, but also from a vitamin and mineral standpoint. You're not going to develop an eating disorder if, when you do break your fast, you eat like you mean it. I've had a few women reach out to me through email and social media and say, hey, I was fasting pretty regularly and I lost my period. And so that's where this myth comes from. But when I start to dig into, hey, well, tell me what you're eating, tell me how much you're eating, every single time, without exception, they were portion controlling and calorie restricting. And they're like, oh, well, I mean, I'm trying to lose weight. I can't just eat all I want. And I replied, no, yeah, actually you can. Because when you combine intermittent fasting with low-carb keto carnivore, that's one of the many benefits, is you get to eat as much food as you can comfortably hold at a sitting. That is the proper amount of food for you. And so all these women who've reached out who lost their period fasting, when they stopped calorie restricting and eating small portion sizes, and they let their hunger and their fullness be their guide, their periods came back just fine. So fasting, especially intermittent fasting on a daily basis, is 100% natural. It's ancestral. There's not a shred of scientific evidence to show that it's in any way harmful for any female on the planet. And it just makes good common sense that if you're trying to burn fat, then you need to have periods of time where you don't eat so that your insulin level stays very low, and that gives you a chance to burn the stored energy, which is fat. That's what fat is. And if you want to burn it, then you've got to not eat for a set number of hours each day. I really hope this video helps. If you know a woman who's afraid of fasting, feel free to share this video with her or on your social media. If you'd like to help me have a little more time and resources to make videos just like this so that I can help even more people, sign up for my Patreon. It's click sign up down below. It's super quick. You can throw a buck or two my way so that I have more time and resources to make videos just like this. This is Dr. Barry. I'll see you next time.